Alrighty. Good morning to everyone here on a Friday, January 13th of 2023. My name is Justin. You guys are listening to the Throw One right here, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, hit that like, share, subscribe button. Also, feel free to get in part of the conversations if you guys are watching us live. Chat it up. Listen, I love to hear the feedback, but we got stories to talk about, and I want to make sure that everyone gets heard. So if you guys are watching us live, you have thoughts, you got opinions, you want to weigh in your concerns throughout the program, leave a comment. Best place I could read them and the best place I could respond to them is during the live shows. If you guys are watching us on Twitter, also want to give you guys a good morning and thank you guys for tuning in. These are just expanded platforms that we're working on, trying to give everybody an opportunity. Someone wakes up in the morning and they check out their Twitter page. Usually for me, when I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm checking maybe Facebook, CBS Sports, stuff like that. I know I was on earlier last week on Facebook. I just have to kind of resync the Facebook account up to StreamYard, who's the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. So we will get to that hopefully by the end of this weekend, so we can go back and live stream on Facebook as well. If you guys are listening to us on audio streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, if it's on there, if you listen to any podcast that's just on there, go check them out as well. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to. Well, we've been through another week in the world of sports. It's kind of been a rocky week, and you kind of just take another moment to breathe in and then breathe out. Because week one last week was not a simple walk through the park in the world of sports, especially not out here, dealing with Monday Night Football, DeMar Hamlin. That was the major focus point, and that happened at the beginning of the week, and there was a certainty that this week would have been better. But you get into everything now diving into the WWE, Stephanie McMahon stepping down, the false reports of a sell being made from the WWE kind of gave everybody a little scare, and you're kind of just asking yourself what's next to come next week, and if it's gonna be in baseball, football, basketball. It seems like, hopefully we don't make this a weekly venue where something maybe jumps out of us where we have to alter our week around it. So, very eventful week, and I'm excited for today. I started talking about the NFL Super Wildcard Weekend the last couple of days. It's kind of been an on and go. For one person, there's only so much take that I could give you based on information. Oops. Messing around with my keyboard. But the information that is given to me, that I could come up with over a couple of football teams. Now, let's simply break it down, right? It's a simple notion to say that it's Super Wildcard Weekend over 3 days, which is a huge deal. It's a one of for me this weekend, this entire month of January, which we look forward to as a football fan, as a sports fan. We look forward to this because for the next month, there is it's win, go home. It's not like hockey. It's not like basketball. It's not like baseball. There's no series. There's no best of three, best of seven scenarios. This is do or die. You play 18 weeks and you play 17 games to determine where you fit on this bracket. 1 through 7 on both AFC and the NFC. And you get to January, you fight to get to January. There was teams last week fighting to get to this moment. Jaguars had to beat the Tennessee Titans to get to this moment. New England had to lose to the Bills. The Dolphins had to beat the Jets for them to get the seventh seed in the AFC. Seattle had to beat the Rams, and the Lions had to beat the Packers for the Seahawks to get into the 7th seed. The Eagles had to beat the Giants in order to clinch the number one seed in the conference. So the same thing with Kansas City. So, every team has now earned their spot. And now we sit here on a Friday, just a little over 24 hours away from kickoff to Super Wildcard Weekend. 2 games will be played on Saturday. That will be the Seahawks and the 49ers. That will be the Chargers and the Jaguars. And we'll talk about those games today. And I'll give you predictions on my take who I believe will win. Then we head over to Sunday where Miami and Buffalo kick things off at 1 o'clock. Then they drop down to the Giants and Vikings. And then we see the Bengals host the Ravens yet again. And then Monday night, they say the best for last. The Cowboys over in Tampa Bay to face the Buccaneers. So 14 teams, getting set. Nerves are kicking in. 6 games among 3 days. Some not playoff implications, but some divisional games on repeat. And here's an interesting fact that I, came across earlier. And let me find it. I'm actually interested. I might have to find this statistic. Is that divisional games played in the postseason? What are their records? And are they favored at home or are they favored on the road? I sit here and I take a look at these 6 games, and there are teams here that honestly surprised me. There are teams here that I didn't believe had what it took to make it to the postseason. I thought, I kind of lingered around Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, those are 2 solid teams that I could, mustered on. Cincinnati Bengals, Baltimore Ravens, another 2 teams that you kind of expect at this moment to make it to the postseason again. The Vikings and the New York Giants are 2 teams that will be facing each other this weekend that I'm probably most surprised about. I never expect Kirk Cousins to give a performance and take his team back to the playoffs. Nonetheless, a dominant duo between Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. Probably one of the quarterbacks and one of the duos in this postseason. I think a lot of people overlook. The Giants were in, and I don't know about anyone else, but for me, when the Giants have been in the postseason, they're fighting for that wild card spot. A couple weeks ago, they clinched the wild card spot, and my thing was like that didn't bother me. It wasn't breaking news highlights. There was really just no, I guess, you know, I guess I'm trying to find the right word this weekend, today. There's just no sense of urgency of, hey, the Giants are in. Are they actually a good football team to actually be in? And when you think about it, the entire NFC East at one moment was holding a spot in the wild card. Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it wasn't impressive. I mean, okay, maybe give them credit for the first 2/3 of the season. But when they went up and they got their spot, when 9, 10 games, and I felt like they hit on cruise control. They're going to have a rematch with the New York Giants. So, I guess my question for you guys is, which conference did you guys enjoy watching the most? Um, there are definitely teams in this, out of the 14 competing for a Super Bowl, victory here over the next few weeks that I did not expect to be in the postseason. And we'll talk heavily about each and every game. Hopefully, last year, and I'm talking about last season, the NFC for me was the number one conversation in the NFL. The AFC had some good key opponents. They had Patrick Mahomes, they had Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, which was questionable because he was coming off the injury, and we just didn't know, those type of injuries that Burrow had a couple years ago. When he returns, it was questionable of whether or not he can maintain and get back to the health and of being a top tier quarterback. Justin Herbert still finding himself. He still had a young Trevor Lawrence who was, breaking out. Um, you also saw, the last year of Ben Roethlisberger, in the AFC North. Lamar Jackson still sustaining injuries, back and forth. Ravens, looking solid, but that was for me not as entertaining as seeing the NFC West. At which point, all right, you got Matthew Stafford, you have um, Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers, Russell Wilson, and then Kyle Murray. And I'm like, that group of guys, quarterbacks, in one league. And I'm like, this is a dangerous league. So last season, I would have said with the combination of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, that the NFC was more entertaining. And this year, everything changed. And from week one, you knew with the deals that have been made, with how the AFC grew and how the players grew over, the off season. You were excited to see Joe Burrow perform, and take his team to the Super Bowl, even though they couldn't win the Super Bowl. Just the fact that, the ego of watching the Bengals and seeing what they could do this year, because you kind of now expect a little bit more, and you want to see if the Bengals could repeat their, success from last year. And that's such a hard thing to do these days. Already know how well Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are. You were kind of waiting to see if Trevor Lawrence could finally get into his own. Justin Herbert's always growing. Derek Carr is always a confident quarterback. AFC North, Lamar Jackson. New England needed a new quarterback. They picked up 3. Lamar Jackson's trying to run that division. Cleveland, who knows where they went. Matt Ryan went over to Indianapolis. And Russell Wilson was probably one of the big blockbuster deals in the offseason, heading on over to Denver, and we saw where that led. So at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of reasons on why you would want to watch the AFC prior, mainly. For me, AFC has really dominated NFL the last couple of years. Although I would have selected back in 2021 that the NFC was a little bit better, just a little bit by hairlines than the AFC. But AFC kind of dominated this year. There was a lot of great matchups, and even looking at this playoff picture that we see here today, that we'll be breaking down today. You look at some of the games, and the AFC is just a better team or better conference when it comes to matchups. You got 2 of the 3 games being played this weekend, divisional rivalries. And even the non-divisional games with the Chargers in Jacksonville, that's still set to be an exciting matchup because it's an even playing field. Justin Herbert and the Chargers are on the road. We haven't seen them in the postseason for a few years. Jacksonville's always a new exciting sight. But, Trevor Lawrence is questionable. In the NFC, Cowboys, Buccaneers, is it going to be we know it's going to be an exciting game. It's going to be a competitive game. We know that the Seahawks and the 49ers could be a competitive game. But there's always one game in the Super Wildcard weekend. That's just that for me feels like it's just kind of there as like, all right, here's a mid game in between intermission. So you take into account for Sunday, for example, and you see Miami and Buffalo. That's going to be a hard hitting game. I think the 2 games coming on Sunday is the first game, Miami and Buffalo, and then the second game, Baltimore and Cincinnati. And then that middle game there at 4:30 on Sunday, Vikings and Giants, are kind of like that game that just, it's there, it's exciting, but I think it's going to be more attractive to just the fan base lingering around Minnesota and New York, the New York Giants. So really very exciting, weekend coming up ahead. It begins. It's kind of an unsurreal moment where, until it starts happening, it's like, all right, it's going to happen. It's going to happen fast. But pretty busy weekend still yet to come. As not only footballs this weekend, we'll give you our predictions, but we also got SmackDown to look ahead to. And then we're also looking ahead to AEW Rampage, and tonight, all right, Hard to Kill, Impact Wrestling's first big pay-per-view of the year, Hard to Kill, Friday the 13th edition, tonight 8 p.m. live on pay-per-view. I believe this event's already sold out. A lot of great matches as we see Josh Alexander and Bully Ray for the Impact World Heavyweight Championship in a Full Metal Mayhem match. You have Jordan Grace taking on Mickie James on a title versus career match, and so much more. So we'll kind of give you a little preview about that, talk a little bit about other sports as well, as we break it down. But I'm expecting a huge weekend of sports. Can't wait to come back. And that's it. All right, we're still kind of waking up here in the morning. So let's go ahead and step away, take our first time out. When we come on back, we'll start breaking down some of these NFL games to you and much more, taking you guys up until 8 o'clock this morning on a Friday, January the 13th. You guys are listening to the TNC. You guys are listening to The Throne with Justin on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. We would like to thank StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. StreamYard Studios is where you could create podcasts, videos, host a virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Go check out their free version today on StreamYard.com. Thanks to StreamYard, that's how we were able to broadcast this show live on a Friday morning via YouTube and via Twitter, as well as hopefully starting back up again next week is YouTube, is Facebook. And as morning hits here, outside 35 degrees, a little staticky in the video production, and see, things are just popping up on my screen as me. There we go. Come on. It's about 35 degrees, 36 degrees outside. Feels like it's in the 20s. It's also early in the morning, which I understand. Things don't want to work. Wi-Fi doesn't really want to work and really want to connect. That's the only downfall that I have when it comes down to using stuff, product online, trying to give you guys content online, is when electronics does not want to work. And one big thing out of StreamYard Studios is the use of the Wi-Fi or the internet, which is not probably the greatest. Sometimes it lags in and out, so I apologize. And if I'm also at that stage with my hair right now where it seems like it doesn't want to work the way that I want it to work. So we will hopefully keep my hair. I don't want it flying left and right throughout the time. All right. So, like I said, today's big focus is primarily on this weekend's wild card bout. 6 games over 3 days. Two on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and we also have the one on Monday night. On as we get ready for trying to get to the postseason, trying to get to the Super Bowl in a few weeks. A couple interesting news though that has surfaced as of yesterday. NFL has actually decided and made that it made it clear about the. Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to get my pop up again. Sit tight. If it ever wants to work. That's what happens. Anyways, NFL has chosen the neutral site for the Bills and Chiefs game for the AFC Championship, if it's to be those two that make it to the AFC Championship. It will be held at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the Atlanta Falcons, in Atlanta. And so this was something that we approached last week in regards to NFL coming out due to the determination of the non-factor game that was suspended because of DeMar Hamlin, and nothing against anything that occurred then. But what ended up happening was, because the Bills and the Bengals did not play, that was one less game. They granted the Bengals the AFC North champions, but when it came down to the playoffs and home field advantage, that's thing. They brought up this entire bracket, and there's a kind of it's kind of hard to read. So I was like, I'm not even gonna go try to get into diving into how the bracket's gonna be, but it's just, all right, what was the result of it? And my take on that was, all right, so we saw the Chiefs win, the Bills win, and the Bengals win. So Kansas City got the first seed, second seed belonged to the Bills. The Bengals got the third seed. So what does that mean? Well, if according to however the AFC Championship plays among these three teams alone, right? If the other four teams end up making it to the AFC Championship, all this goes out the window. If even one of the four teams goes to the AFC Championship, it goes to the home field advantage, who has the higher seed. Well, if Cincinnati and Kansas City meets each other again in the AFC Championship game, then we will see the home field advantage. Cincinnati, Kansas City being one seed is 2 seeds higher than Cincinnati. They will be playing in Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. But if it goes down to the Bills and to the Chiefs, then what NFL has decided to do, because there has been that one less game that was to be played, that could have very well put Buffalo in the number 1 seed, will be played at a neutral site. Neither Buffalo, neither Kansas City. And it has been determined, right, by NFL that they will be played at a neutral site in Atlanta. They'll be playing inside a dome. And what I like about this, they're playing at a stadium that neither team really quite knows a lot of. It's indoor. It's also an NFC stadium. And I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that any team has played with, in Atlanta this past year. I may be wrong on that, but I don't think so. So, unfortunately, maybe I wouldn't like to see, this happen, just have home field advantage. I feel like this is the best way to play fair in making this fair decision. And, this is something because, there was even stuff that was going back between determining where the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals game would be played this week if Baltimore won. Even though Cincinnati captured the AFC North, if Baltimore won, they were going to do a coin flip. And we could have been talking about today how Baltimore would have the home field advantage over the Bengals in this game. So, I don't think there's, NFL is trying to do the best they can with what they have, and I don't blame whatsoever the NFL. There is probably a million ways of handling all of this, and they're choosing to handle this the best way that's possible. No one expected this act of nature to happen with Damar Hamlin, to put the NFL such late into the season, such great momentum going into the offseason down this road. So, but yeah, keep that in your calendar books. If the Bills and the Chiefs advance to the AFC Championship game, then it will be played in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the Atlanta Falcons. All right. Kind of moving along here, kind of want to start talking about some NFL games this weekend, Super Wildcard weekend, kicking things off. And the game that will actually be here tomorrow night, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, is the play-by-play broadcast from me. All right, giving you the rundown of everything. So if you can't find it on TV, you can't listen to it on the radio, you guys could tune into YouTube, tune into the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. While you're there, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Anyways, self-promoting here, but we will be we'll be giving you play-by-play content of the Seahawks and the 49ers game tomorrow afternoon, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The number 7 seed Seattle takes on the number 2 seed San Francisco. And man, this is one of the 3 divisional games that are going to be played this weekend. Seattle was one of those teams that I did not believe was going to be anywhere near the playoff bout. I did not believe that. This is it all takes you back to the offseason this year, where I think one of the blockbuster moves was Pete Carroll, now fixated on Geno Smith after Russell Wilson decides that he's going to take off and play for the Denver Broncos moving forward. This is this was one of my, takes where Denver, I thought that they picked up a chip. Yeah, Russell Wilson has been injured. He's been out, but at the same time, he's been calling for a new team, new look, a fresh start somewhere else. Seattle hasn't been the great, hasn't been, being in the postseason the last couple of years. A lot of teams or a lot of players or a lot of people thought that Pete Carroll and in the Seahawks were done. This was also a new look when this happened. That hey, we're gonna start this whole quote unquote rebuild mode, and they're gonna go with Geno Smith, who I thought that I think a lot of people thought it was only going to take them into the you know this 1 year. Maybe he would have been released, and then the Seattle would have went to the draft and try to pick up a guy like Bryce Young or Will Levis. Well, let's listen. We got to give credit where credit's due for the first and foremost. All right, Pete Carroll is something. He's kind of reproven that he can, take his team to the playoffs with or without Russell Wilson. All right, in my opinion, this ends up helping, Pete Carroll's case, because a lot of people at the beginning of the season would have anticipated that, hey, Pete Carroll, it's time to hang up your coaching cleats here. Put away the headsets and call it done. Maybe go back down to college and coach for a few more years. But the NFL days are done. This is going to be part of the rebuild mode. Well, Seattle kind of has to put that rebuild mode on a little bit of hold as they head into the playoffs and head into tomorrow's afternoon's game against the 49ers. Okay. It's going to be a rainy game, I will tell you that. So we're going to rely on a lot of Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Kenneth Walker to be the main weapons. It's going to be about ball control in tomorrow's game. I can assure you that's going to be the case. You're talking about NFC becoming ball control. Oh, I'm just reading my notes here. So we're going to see Geno Smith taking on Brock Purdy. All right, to San Francisco. This one thing I want to also reiterate with a lot of you guys. Okay, we know that San Francisco, as I explained to you what Seattle had to go through in the offseason, how they were imaged to be a rebuild team. And I don't think a lot of people, including Pete Carroll, Seattle, were expecting an opportunity into the playoffs. Okay. I think, though, this elevates, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, into the wild card weekend. And for a team who kind of probably didn't belong in the wild card this weekend, like I said, they did their job back on Sunday. They put themselves in a position where all they had to do was go in and win. And then coming on Sunday night, the rest had to play out depending on how the Lions and Packers game unfolded. And we saw the Lions defeat the Packers, and we saw the Seahawks somehow find their way in. They were able to seal their faith. But for San Francisco, we expected the number 2 seed. We expected being in the postseason this year. And the reason why we expected San Francisco over Seattle to be in the postseason this year is because we also maybe thought that the Rams, wouldn't have a stellar year like they did last year, going to the Super Bowl. You would have figured that they would have had at least, a playoff contingency. And so I think that's why maybe a lot of people are surprised to see Seattle, because maybe they were expecting Los Angeles to kind of be in that forefront on the top of the division. But let's remember San Francisco's story. This was a team who went with Trey Lance. They had to make a decision. They went with Trey Lance over Jimmy Garoppolo because Jimmy Garoppolo was injury prone. So he went with Trey Lance over Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance gets hurt not even halfway through the first month of the NFL season, forcing Jimmy Garoppolo to step up and to play and to prove in the 49ers just why that they made a mistake. Okay, that they should have stuck with him to begin with. And I like Jimmy Garoppolo, but just right after Thanksgiving, he gets hurt, has to put in Brock Purdy, who was the original backup, who is now the third string backup, and Brock Purdy had to tackle on some reins. 49ers put themselves, both Trey Lance and Garoppolo put themselves in a position, the team in a position where they were contending for the postseason. And Purdy, as a rookie quarterback, had to step up and had to accomplish and maintain that win record. Now, he's done a pretty good job. Brock Purdy, 1,374 yards, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in the month of December, moving into now. Okay, I don't know what the status of Brock Purdy is, if he's going to be a starting quarterback, if he's going to be a backup quarterback, but I like my odds with Brock Purdy and the 49ers in the postseason. San Francisco, on the other hand, this, like I said, this is a divisional game. They've already met each other twice, and the 49ers beat Seattle in Seattle, beat the Seahawks in Seattle by 8. And they've also beat the Seahawks by 20 at home. So San Francisco's going into this game 2-0. And something that I didn't want to mention here before we cut to a break, and as I wrap up my thoughts on the Seahawks and the 49ers, is that teams that are 2-0 against opponents in the regular season, they are also 14-9 during their third meeting in the playoffs. So put some comparisons into that. As I mentioned, it's going to be raining during the game. They're going to rely a lot on the ground game. And I just believe, okay, and here's also my last point on this, is that San Francisco is probably the only team out of the entire NFC right now that is more consistent with their success. They've been to the postseason the last few years. They've won postseason games the last few years because, yeah, you could throw in Tom Brady. You could throw in, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, they've been in the postseason, but they can't get over that hump. The reason why I talk about Tom Brady not being at the greatest stage of his, right now situation is because he right now he can't show consistency. The entire team can't. But San Francisco can. They're number 2 seed again. They were ranked pretty well last year. They just seem like they're climbing up the ladder. I think this is an easy prediction here. San Francisco defeats the Seattle Seahawks in the first Super Wild Card Weekend game of the weekend. Game starts at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm choosing the 49ers over the Seahawks. All right, we got to cut to a break. Kind of a little longevity. We'll come back and talk about some more games. Chargers, Jaguars coming ahead, as well as the Dolphins and the Bills and much more. You guys are listening to the Throw-In right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. .646 here on the Throw-In. We'd like to give a shout out to Epidemic Sound. Golden Era by Mary Riddle. It's played through you by Epidemic Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music link. For more information, check out epidemicsound.com. All right, we are just after some morning Wi-Fi complications. It looks like the internet's going to be in and out. I hope it doesn't really get too much distracting. I don't know how much of a lag it is over the entire program, but I hope it's not too much that we can't get through our program the way that we want it to. We're already, I would consider, just a little bit behind here, but I want to continue diving into the conversations of the Super Wild Card Weekend that is set to be placed this Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We have a lot of games, 6 games to cover, and we just got done talking about predictions about Seattle and San Francisco. Like I said, in a short turn wrap here, I'm predicting San Francisco 49ers to win and beat the Seahawks. Like I said, they're just the most consistent team out of the NFC. I'm expecting the 49ers to go pretty far, but I think one thing that you want to remember, that I think we want to remind you, it was the same scenario each and every year. It's the team who has nothing to lose probably does play better overall. But it's also about, don't pick the teams that you believe is, if they lose, they lose. And the thing is, between the Seahawks and the 49ers, no one expected Seattle to go to the postseason, with Geno Smith and with Pete Carroll. I think a lot of people expected and anticipated a down year, a rebuild year, and it could have been a new direction depending on how that season went. And although it's surprising, listen, if Seattle loses tomorrow, they're still going to be etched and talked about as a team that probably didn't expect it to be in there, or shouldn't have been in there. And I think it's still a win-win at this point, wherever you decide, or wherever the Bengal or the Seahawks decide to lose, or decide the direction they decide to go in. I think this is a year to remember for Geno Smith, who is now trying to maybe make his case for next season. I don't know if he's going to be back, but I still say, San Francisco wins, but Seattle, hold your head up pretty high. Sunday night's doubleheader will conclude. Oh, I got the wrong game on. Sunday night's doubleheader will conclude with the Los Angeles Chargers at the 5 seed taking on the 4 seed Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a week 3 matchup, as the Jaguars and Chargers met earlier on in this season in SoFi Stadium, and the Jaguars just dismantled the Chargers 38-10, as they look to do the same thing as well. A quick notion here. I mentioned Trevor Lawrence. I expected this from Trevor Lawrence. I was like, Trevor Lawrence needs to have some sort of establishment year. And although I think you could probably go forth in saying that, it's mainly about, this season, it's mainly been about Jacksonville's defense that's helped them get to where they were in. Because let's face it, they didn't play the way they wanted to play back against the Tennessee Titans. But Trevor Lawrence will get his first chance in a crack at the postseason against the Chargers, a team that you dominated back in week 3. Now, I understand it's a new scenario, but you have the momentum of winning and beating the Titans last week to lead you into this week. Trevor Lawrence, he's listed questionable, okay, for this game. Now, you listen to questionable for Saturday's game. He's thrown 4,173 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Okay. And he, and even in, I'm just going to throw out there CJ Beathard, 35 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. I know that if Trevor Lawrence gets a chance and gets cleared to go out there on Saturday and play, that he would have a better chance at winning this game. Yes, you have Justin Herbert on the other side of the ball. Yeah, you have Justin Herbert, who's thrown 4,739 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Right? Yes, this is a rematch, but here's the problem. Brandon Staley, I think, is the biggest issue going into this game. He played most of his starters for a majority of the second half. in a meaningless game against the Denver Broncos. They clinched the playoffs. They clinched the fifth seed. They know they're going to go in. All right, and they decided. Brandon Staley decided, hey, we are going to go ahead and just play. Let's play our starters, and we're going to take the chance for the rest. No, in my opinion, I don't think that's quite a smart coaching decision, and it's a reason why, in my belief, that the Chargers only go so far. Chargers go so far because they have great talent. They're, in my opinion, they're right up there with the Bengals, with the Bills, and with the Chiefs. But the problem that I have is that the coaching decisions made by the Chargers each and every year put them in a position where they just, you kind of like, I'm not surprised that they lose, or I'm not surprised that they're not in the postseason. As good as they are, they should be in the AFC Championship each and every year. Divisional championship at the worst. But you can't do that if you are not, if you're not, only the teams who go to the Super Bowl make Super Bowl coaching decisions. The teams who don't go to the Super Bowl don't make the coaching decisions. Brandon Staley is one of them. They got great staff. They got great players. It's the head coach. Right? And this week, unfortunately, as much as, we could sit here and ponder over, Trevor Lawrence being hurt. And I don't know the extent and the longevity of his injury, but for Trevor Lawrence being hurt, I'm still picking the Jaguars to upset. I think that this is going to be, listen, back in week 3, Austin Eckler didn't have a great game. Brandon Staley decided to play his starters well into the second half, all right, which may cause an effect. All right. Mike Williams, Joey Bursa, although I'm expecting them to play this week, they're injured and they're going to be play hurt. They're not going to be at the 100%. And two guys that you probably really rely on the most. It's going to hurt the team. Gosh, sneezing here. All right. Moving on, because I want to continue with the program and everything. Well, let's dive into Sunday's matchup. All right. We got the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. And the first thing that comes up to my mind is that this was anticipated to be a really good game, but there's no Tua. You know what? I don't blame Tua for not being in. I blame Miami. They have dug their own grave. All right. I understand. Listen, Tua, if he got the chance to play, if he got cleared to play, he would play this upcoming game against the Bills. This is probably a bigger game today than it was back at the beginning of the season when they first met. Not only Tua's out, Teddy Bridgewater's out, and now you have to rely on Skylar Thompson, who so far has only thrown 534 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. This game for Miami is probably one of the most represented games. When you want to maybe talk about the entire 53-man roster needs to be ready to play at any level, this is the reason why. Skylar Thompson, is going to be that key source. But you look at this and you're like, well, how in the world can a third string quarterback, who's not Brock Purdy, by the way, all right, because he's already established himself. Skylar Thompson has not had many NFL games. He has not had a lot of preparation other than at practice to get to where he wants to be at when, compared to Josh Allen, who's thrown 35 touchdowns. But with Tua out, okay, who I think is a key factor, if Teddy Bridgewater, how could the Bills, I mean, that's my question. How can you think or bet for the Dolphins to beat the Bills in this scenario? maybe Teddy Bridgewater would have a fighting chance. And maybe I'm not giving Skylar Thompson, and someone out there in Miami is probably praising Skylar Thompson that he's going to be our savior. And that's not the case. That is not going to be the case for the Buffalo Bill or for the Miami Dolphins. Here's another note. Miami Dolphins has lost 4 straight playoff games by 17 points per each game. That's not exciting news. That's not the way that you want to look at things. So with now a solid defense who's kind of shutting down and, historically it's known for kind of failing in the postseason, now going through a third string quarterback who has not really gotten a chance to establish himself quite yet. We look at the Buffalo Bills. I think that this is just going to be an easy pick for the Buffalo Bills. As much as I want this to be a competitive rivalry game, they split the series during the year, but that's especially when Miami had a lot of their top talent stars. I'm going definitely Buffalo all the way on this one, and we may actually get a chance to see the Bills and the Bengals play after all. All right, hour number 1's wrapped up. We're halfway through. We got 3 more games to talk about into this super wild card weekend in the world of football. We'll come back. We'll wrap those up. I want to talk a little bit more about other football news, as Dak Prescott is probably set to say goodbye. Also, a little bit of baseball, and then we get you guys ready for SmackDown, Rampage, and Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill, which is tonight, Friday the 13th. So don't go nowhere. Thank you guys for tuning into the Throw-In with Justin. Take a break. Come back. Hour number 2 begins after this quick break. Alrighty, hour number 2 here on the Throw-In. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hour number 2, I want to give a big shout out. Thanks to Spreaker, who provides us our audio streaming platforms. You guys are downloading us and checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, anywhere you listen to your podcast, we could be found. Although there are probably delays that I don't necessarily upload the episodes right away. All right, but it's a Friday, January the 13th. Let's just take a moment here before we continue in football conversation to kind of take a deep breath in. First 2 weeks of the world of sports. They just started back last week. A great New Year's weekend in the world of sports with college football, basketball, and the NFL. And that all came to a halt with the Bengals and Bills game Monday night that week, where we had to change our course of action, unfortunately, because of Damar Hamlin. And it's still so unsurreal, in my opinion, that we could be sitting here today getting a chance to talk about upcoming games like the Bills and Dolphins this weekend, and like we're going to talk about here in a moment with the Bengals and the Ravens, knowing that a man, I was going to go out and say a young kid practically died on the field getting revived for that moment. I think it's unsurreal. That, and we knew the face of reality was that the sport and the world must go on. It was difficult on the show, being 20 minutes away from the stadium, sitting here telling you, well, how can, having to talk about football, how can we talk about football? How can we move on when we just witnessed probably the most the most heartfelt, thing imaginable. No one's ever had to cover it yet during the live sport. There's only one incident that I refer back to that I think we can. It wasn't on television, but one incident I remember where something like this happened. That was a few years ago. Back with Rey Mysterio, who was wrestling in Mexico and in a tag match, and a tragic incident happened. That part, unfortunately, at that scenario, that someone died. But to be able to cover something like this in the world of sports, that just to kick off 2023 was hard. Then you had Wrestle Kingdom, who went underway. Then we find out that Vince McMahon has came back the end of last week. And that, then coming into this week, we're talking about Stephanie McMahon, Stephanie McMahon stepping down as co-CEO and, chairwoman of WWE. Then we had that false scare back on Wednesday morning that WWE was sold to Saudi Arabia. That just turned out to be there was a conversation about it. There was a principle, maybe a conversation or two, and nothing really emerged of it. And that gave us a scare of reality of where WWE is potentially headed down the road. But we're sitting here today. I just we'll take a second and think and kind of reflect about everything. And I'm like, boy, what is to come next weekend? But yeah, that's something that we like to do. Try to slow down, take a step out. Like I said, news coming out earlier yesterday about, I want to reiterate, the NFL has chosen the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the home of the Atlanta Falcons, to be the neutral site if the Bills and Chiefs play in the AFC Championship game in a couple weeks. Talked about the Bills and the Dolphins moments ago. Want to kind of switch our focus over, continuing back into the NFC wild card as the Vikings and the Giants do battle. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, there's kind of every team or every weekend, there's kind of like a game that's kind of just there, just to be there. And this is a game where it's kind of like, all right, we could watch it if you're a football fan, but mainly the two teams interested in watching this game, or the people interested in watching this game, is going to be the Vikings and the Giants. This is a fresh rematch from Week 16. And I want you to remember when Greg Joseph kicked the 71-yard game-winning field goal. We may not see the same result. Daniel Jones coming into this game, 3,205 yards thrown, for throwing, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Minnesota Vikings, 4,000, Kirk Cousins, who I think's had a spectacular year when you could put up the same numbers as Josh Allen. 4,547 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. But my scenario, my problem with this game is that the Vikings, in an example, and I'll put on Vikings on the spot because they kicked off to a great start. But somewhere along the line, after winning 9-10 games, they've kind of played that mellow out playoff atmosphere where you could kind of sit back and watch and observe and be like, all right, we made it. We won the 10 games and we can sit back and rest. I don't know if that was the right strategy. I mean, I think it threw a lot of people off from surprise that the Vikings made it. They took over the entire South. The problem is, and I think that I have, with this game, is that the Vikings defense ranked bottom 5 in points per game at 25.1, yards per game at 388.7, and yards per play 5.9. And as well as I know, you can't win a game with that. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. It just can't 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 take place. So listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I appreciate New York or Minnesota for coming this way. For having this miraculous season. Who would have thought that they would have replaced the Green Bay Packers? Who would have thought they would have been better than the Detroit Lions, nonetheless? Um, and I'm excited in the offseason. I really want to break down this division, because if there's any division in the NFC that I think is worth talking about moving on in the future, um, is the Packers and the Vikings and the Lions. But I'm going with the New York Giants solely on this one. Saquon Barkley, um, Daniel Jones. This is the 1-2 punch combination. They're going to want this more. And I can see them lasting out one more week. So I'm picking the Giants over the Minnesota Vikings in this game. All right. But now we get to Sunday night's football game, which I think a lot of us are excited about. Yes, that is the number 6 Baltimore Ravens taking on the number 3 Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, listen, we could say that this is that rematch, right? That rematch that everybody wants to watch out. I mentioned to you earlier that, listen, I think this is a split series in the regular season. Definitely Cincinnati has a lot more momentum going up after winning 27-16 last week, right? And it's all about, I think, who has a little bit more to play for. Baltimore has gotten to the point where they needed to get to the playoffs comfortably, but they're dealing with their own injuries. And when you have two of your top quarterbacks in Lamar Jackson, who is still questionable for playing on Sunday night's game, he's facing that uphill battle. He's dealing with the shoulder injury. He's dealing with, his knee injury, PCL sprain about, a couple weeks ago. Tyler Huntley, who was supposed to be his backup quarterback, is now out also. So you're relying on Anthony Brown. 0 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. You're going up against Joe Burrow, and you're going up against Jamar Chase. If you don't see Lamar Jackson in the game, I'm rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals. Listen, I got the Burrows from last year's Super Bowl up there. I'm rooting for the Bengals to win this game, and not just because that's where I'm at. I want the Bengals to go on and win, yeah, but they're favored in this game, in my opinion. I really like the scenario with the Bengals beating the Ravens, especially if there's no Lamar Jackson. Last week, if the Ravens played anything like they did last week, it's gonna be a walk through the park, and we'll come on this show Sunday celebrating, getting ready for the next game. There was no ball security. Robinson was dropping passes. Walker missed a couple of key passes, especially key passes that could have kept them in the game, and a little bit of poor play decision. Brown even fumbled in the end zone. So if they don't get those things corrected by Sunday, I just really think it's going to be a disaster. I choose I got the Bengals in this game over over the Ravens. Last but not least, we'll talk briefly about this, although we could probably talk a little bit more coming up Monday, but that is going to be the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. Okay, the last wild card game of the week that'll be played Monday night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. Number 5, number 4 seed, Dak Prescott versus Tom Brady. A couple interesting things that I think is worth to mention today, heading into the game, that we'll probably repeat ourselves on Monday. But Tom Brady, some interesting notes. Tom Brady is 7-0 versus the Cowboys. Dallas is 4-5 as a playoff favorite. All right, and Tom Brady is 7-3 when Vegas votes against him. So here's a scenario now. Now, hey, there's time to change, but here's the scenario now. Tom Brady hasn't in favor because Vegas votes voting against them. Dallas is also in favor because they're the favorite to win this game, but Tom Brady's undefeated against the Cowboys. I I think this is such a good game in such wrong ways, to be honest. Both teams, man, is not they're not at the top of their level. They're not where they want to be. This is not the same Tom Brady nor Tampa Bay Buccaneer team that won the Super Bowl a few years back. This is not the same team that you even saw last year heading into the playoffs. And this, I guess that's where the concerning factor is that you don't have this is, with you think of the GOAT and even the GOATs having problems. And for the first time, I think in my, in watching Tom Brady play, you always ask yourself every playoff season is how can you not vote for Tom Brady? How can you vote for Tom Brady? He's the GOAT. He's the number one, top player. He's a first round ballot Hall of Famer. He is destined to play 5 more years. He never shows signs of weakness. This is that year where that consistency was not the same. Just like I can't take, it's just, we talked earlier about this in the NFC. I'm picking out the 49ers because the last few years they played the most consistent football, giving you the same results. And although the Cowboys are also into this game, Dak Prescott's back into this game, into this position. What's positive to talk about them? Because Dak Prescott's tied for the NFL lead in interceptions with Davis Mills from the Houston Texans despite missing 5 games. It's one thing when you to throw interceptions, 15 interceptions this season. I don't care about the touchdowns. I mean, listen, good quarterbacks like Tom Brady's thrown 9. Right? Yes, you see Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen throw 14. Joe Burrow has thrown 12 interceptions. And I think that is given. When you have a good team surrounding you, you're going to make mistakes. But for missing a good quarter of the season, for missing, for having the complications and having the walk in the, park that you did in the East after coming back, how can you root for the Dallas Cowboys? If anything says from last year, the Cowboys are consistent, but when they get to the postseason, they can't get over that hump. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to still stick with, and I don't know reason why, and I don't know how far Tampa Bay is going to get in throughout the playoffs, but I'm going to have to stick with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Now, I'm hoping, maybe this is just a spark for Tampa Bay, and they could probably, head on over to either San Francisco or they could even head on over to, Philadelphia and take care of business, and we could clearly see them back in the Super Bowl. But I think that this year is going to be a little bit more of a long shot. And for the first time, like I said, I question Tom Brady in the playoffs. All right, we'll continue talking about sports. Coming back, Derek Carr says goodbye to the Raiders as a process of evaluation and trade marketing. Also, some baseball news about Trevor Bauer being released from the Los Angeles Dodgers. What does that mean? Still more to come as we take you up until the 8 o'clock hour. You guys are listening to the Throw In with Justin right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. To the bank like ha 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 ha. Ooh, go. Laugh it to the bank like ha 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 ha. Ooh, yeah. I got any 10s, 20, 50, 100. I want to go ahead and remind everybody as we return to the throw-in. Thank you guys. Good morning. 7:23, taking you guys up until 8 o'clock. I got to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me on that one. Gosh, that was that was waiting to come out. It just so happens that all these sneezes and everything comes out at right when we come back or during the show. They never even actually occur on the during the breaks or anything like that. Now my glasses and everything all fog. I want to remind everyone that we are going to be calling the super wild card game, first game of the wild card between the Seahawks and the 49ers. You guys can check us out tomorrow. Our pre-content will start at around 4 o'clock and move on until after at least 30 minutes after the ball game. This is the first game. It's going to be Geno Smith versus Brock Purdy, and I'm really excited about calling this game. Yet again, I'm also very nervous. I went to go pick up myself some headphones. So one thing I don't have, excuse me, and maybe I'll even try to use these to test them out. As a matter of fact, when I come back for the last break, the last 15 minutes, I'll use these. I have these new headphones that are kind of like gaming headphones, but they worked with. Let me try to put them in. They worked, and you could use them. And so while I call the game, I can use the headphones to talk, listen to myself, and all that stuff. So maybe, hopefully, that the on my last break, I'll use these headphones to give out an actual quality going live before Saturday's game. But I'm excited. I don't, pick and choose the games. I got my kids coming over this weekend, and there's a lot that we're gonna do. I know we're gonna have them Sunday, so I don't quite know if I'm gonna be able to have call Sunday's game. I'm not gonna go sit down and call the Bengals and Ravens game on Sunday night just because I got to get back up early in the morning, at 4:30. So I don't want to exert my energy. I want to actually sit back, watch the Bengals game. I was thinking about trying to call the Bills and the Dolphins game on Sunday. There's a lot of work, a lot of prep, especially in a football game where it's consistent. You don't quite know the number. You have to correspond the number on the number on the jersey on the field to who's everything that's going on. So, you know, we'll call the Seahawks game. We'll see how that goes, and then we'll see what we can do the following weekend. But playoff weekend is here, and we're expected to go now. Based off of the outcome and the return that we're going to get for tomorrow's afternoon's game, will probably determine on how many more games we'll be calling for the playoff season. It's so the one thing I will say, because I know I call baseball games quite often, and it's quite easy under my distressed opinion to call a baseball game other than a football game, because baseball games are a little bit more laid back, a little less of what's going on. You could have a little bit more time explaining, things than football. It's a top consistent thing. So we'll see how tomorrow goes, and everything, and wrap up great week. And I want to get down, and maybe depending on how things go, maybe we'll do Monday Night Football. I don't know. I have no idea. We'll determine that when the time comes. Unfortunately, I wish I had like more longevity news. Hey, we'll call this game on this date, a little bit more time of promoting it, but it's really just on the fly the week of, a few days prior. Some news coming out from Fox 13 in Tampa Bay, I guess about 19 hours ago. Great news. Former NFL star Peyton Hillis is now breathing on his own after being taken off the ventilator, according to his girlfriend, and Angela Cole has been in critical condition after saving his children from drowning at the beach in Florida Panhandle last week, but now is on the road to recovery. So, want to send prayers and thoughts out to Peyton Hillis out there, who, that was one of the stories that unraveled this week that I think kind of got out overmissed and overlooked. So his prayers are going to go sent out to him as well. 11-time world champion Edge has last seen on WWE TV at Extreme Rules back in October, where he lost to an I Quit match against Finn Balor. We previously reported in December that WWE was discussing having Edge to return at the Royal Rumble to face Finn Balor in a Hell in a Cell match, which I think that still should happen. I'll explain a little bit more. And an update on things we've learned that the ringside roster, wrestling news, and rumors, according to the news report from Fightful and PW Insider, the current plan is still to have Edge return at the Royal Rumble on January 28th, and his match with Finn Balor has been penciled in. It also is noted that Edge and Beth Phoenix versus Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley is a current plan for an elimination chamber in February. All right, so let me kind of just weigh in for a second. I mean, this is kind of just something I've been following. Just read this, during one of the breaks. Wanted to share with you guys more details about it as I read it. There is a rumor that let me clear my throat. There is a rumor that Edge will return at the Royal Rumble. And yes, there has been conversations. I have heard the rumors of the conversations about how Edge and Finn Balor are scheduled to do a Hell in a Cell match at the Royal Rumble. And this is news to me when you start pairing Edge with Beth Phoenix for Rhea Ripley and Finn Balor. Now, I think it's all great. As a matter of fact, I want both of them to happen between now and WrestleMania. I don't know. Excuse me. Lodged in my throat. I don't know if this should be pushed to a Royal Rumble match. You got the 16th, and then you got next week. You got 2 episodes of Raw before Royal Rumble's here. And I think the main focus at the Rumble has to be set on the men's and women's Royal Rumble match alone. Yeah, you have Kevin Owens taking on Roman Reigns. Yes, you have Bray Wyatt taking on LA Knight. Throw in another match or 2, fine by me. But you really need to probably focus yourself this year on the Royal Rumble, right? That's the highlight of Royal Rumble. Then you set your eyes to the Elimination Chamber match, at which, last year we saw Edge and Beth Phoenix take on Miz and Maurice. And I'm sure, and I'm fine again to see, Edge and Beth Phoenix take on Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley. I'm fine with that. But that whole Hell in a Cell match idea, which I am actually opposed to, like, I don't know how much Edge is going to be able to give you with his age and his ability and all that stuff. But I think that match should be waited for WrestleMania. One of the nights needs to be a Hell in a Cell match. I mean, I think that's the appropriate direction. I mean, disagree with me if you want to, but I think that Edge, the idea of Edge and Finn Balor set to WrestleMania is more appropriate idea than trying to push it over the next 2 weeks for the Royal Rumble that is to come up here then on the January 28th. So I was just reading into that, wanted to share thoughts and ideas as we explore those options. Just trying to see what else we have on here before I jump back in to the world of football, back into football again. One thing I wanted to go ahead and say and talk about as football is on the way. You know what? I'm going to save that until next segment because I am actually talking about wrestling. And the one thing I also want to, at this time, we'll go ahead and just start bringing up the ideas. Hey, SmackDown tonight, I believe there's an Intercontinental Championship match afoot. Braun Strowman, I believe, will take on Gunther, if I'm not mistaken. Um, AEW Rampage is also tonight on TNT, 8 p.m. So we got SmackDown leading your way as we get closer to the Royal Rumble, as we now see the direction of Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns setting themselves. There's still a lot more to be done at the Bloodline. You have the Usos, I believe, taking on Judgment Day at the Royal Rumble, if I'm not mistaken. Um, shaping up to be a pretty good card match. If you would ask me, would break down more of that still to come as the weeks progress, as we learn more. I'm liking the whole LA Knight, Bray Wyatt feud, Uncle Howdy exploring, expanding the product and the storyline. And I love the most how they're finally bringing it over to Raw. I mean, I think the only thing that has, in my opinion, um, upsetted me was that they're taking this a little too long. It's taken too long for all this to unfold and unravel. AEW Rampage is on tonight, and that's going to be on TNT. I want to say it's actually at 10. I don't know why I put 8. It's actually at 10. And, some great matches set to be placed. I know we're keeping an eye out on Bryan Danielson. Um, you know, um, and then also Darby Allin, who recently just won that TNT championship. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then last but not least, coming up here tonight, the first big impact for for Impact Wrestling. First pay-per-view live for them. That's going to be Hard to Kill. That's going to be live tonight, pay-per-view available. At the in Atlanta, Georgia. I think it begins at 8 p.m. Also, Center Stage, Atlanta. Hard to Kill. Couple great matches. We got Josh Alexander taking on Bully Ray in a Full Metal Mayhem match. Impact World Championship match. Anytime you get Bully Ray in there, I think he understands his role. I mean, and there's no doubt about it. He's out there looking out for these new guys, these younger guys, trying to build these guys up, make a name for them. And he's always out there how he can make better. So I don't know if this is, I know this is going to elevate Josh Alexander's career. This is also going to put the test to see where Bully's at physically, and especially a Full Metal Mayhem. I don't quite see Bully Ray coming out on top. We'll find out over the weekend. Here, Impact Tag Team Championships, Motor City Machine Guns, who are currently champions, will take on Chris Bay and Ace Austin. Will also take on Major Players and Heath Miller and Rhino in elimination tag match tonight for the Impact Tag Team Championships. X Division Championship is on the line. Trey Miguel will defend his title against Black Taurus. Eddie Edwards takes on Jonathan Gresham. We have the number one contenders match for the Impact Knockout Women's Champion on the way. It's a fatal 4-way. Digital Championship, Joe Hendry takes on Moose. And then a couple other, Death Dolls taking on Tasha Steele, Savannah Evans, Giselle Shaw also. But the big match that I think is coming away, besides the Impact World Championship match, has to be the Impact Knockout Knockout Championship match. Jordan Grace takes on Mickie James. It's a title versus career, in a sense that if Mickie James loses, she is forced to retire, which is another step. Just a year ago, Mickie James was being asked to compete in the Royal Rumble. She was being asked to bring her Impact Knockout Championship and promote it, and that's what she has done. And so that privilege has won wilds there. So if you guys are looking for some authentic wrestling, professional wrestling tonight, this is a big deal for Impact Wrestling heading into this new year, trying to set the tone and the path for what the year is to come. Kind of out with the old, in with the new revamping image here. Hard to Kill tonight, pay-per-view style. Don't want to miss that out. I believe it's about 7 or 8 o'clock that will start off. All right, let's take our last break of the episode. We'll come back. We're still taking you up until 8 o'clock. I wanted to talk about some football, now some baseball, and we'll actually, talked about a little bit about the games that we're going to be calling this weekend, and about how wrestling went through, and shared you some wrestling news. That's why I went down the wrestling route. We'll come back. We'll talk about about Derek Carr saying goodbye to the Raiders, and about what the Dodgers did this yesterday that may put now a big player on the market, and it's going to be strategy for how the rest of the organizations are going to handle that. That's still to come here on the Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Por eso estoy bien acá como alos, para los herbal. Es que para ti no hay, si no eres de aquí no te quieren no, pero cuando entono a los tonitas, me luce bien nada.
Alrighty, so we're actually just testing this out. These are the headphones that I actually brought, that I bought yesterday. I actually want to thank my fiance for actually buying this. We go back and forth quite often in wanting to buy things for each other. It's like always, all right, we're going to buy what we need, not what we want. And half the time we put a lot of our stuff back. So, I was talking about calling the game. We're actually at Walmart, and I was talking about calling the game this weekend. I was like, one of the things that would help me the most, because what I do in calling the game is that what I end up doing is, and I'm just testing this out, so so I'm listening to myself right now, just because on the YouTube there's a delay. All right, so things look pretty solid using these headphones, and this is a headphone. It has the microphone to it, and the idea is that I'm not going to go this route, even though I possibly could. I like the microphone with me. I really do. I really like having the microphone up here talking about it. I know I move it along around, but it's one of those things where I could kind of play with, move my body. Although I think the only thing down far is with the boomstick and the microphone is that it gets away with all the paperwork that I have. But this is so that I could call the game over the weekend. And like I said, I was talking to my fiance the other day. We went to Walmart. I was like, I'm calling the weekend, which I love her. She's very supportive of doing the show. She's very supportive of what we do and what we talk about. She's even on the couch listening. She very adamant listen to each and every program whenever I get the opportunity to actually post them up on platforms, audio platforms. But she's also in there, hey, FYI, this last episode kind of wasn't your greatest because you were kind of rambling and kind of getting lost and mixing the shuffle. So she's a big supporter, helping, advising, what is best for the content. So we were at Walmart the other day, and I was saying, hey, I was going to call the football games. Instead of having, when I call the football games, I go to the bedroom. No one's in there. Everyone can hang out in the living room or whatnot. There's a guest bathroom. And I'm like, instead of having to lug this entire desk back, which I don't do that, I'm going to go get one of our TV trays. I can just bring the laptop, and I would normally bring the laptop, the set soundbar system, and then with the boomstick on top of that, to call the game. And I think that's a lot because, I'm going to have all these papers with all this information about players and whatnot with me. And I'm going to probably be wanting to stand or something like that. So I'm like, all right, why don't you get yourself a pair of headphones to call a game? And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. So we looked, and a matter of fact, excuse me, but we were looking at some of the options that I had, and my biggest fear was that this was not going to work with the Mawana cast system, which I like about it because I could also mute because of my throat. But I was looking at the Turtle Beach, and we got the Turtle Beach Recon 50, 550X. This is only going to be designed for broadcasting games. I don't think I'm going to be using this for shows. I think that I'm going to keep with the stick, and then but when I call football games this weekend, I'm able to look down in front of me, look at what I'm doing, look ahead, look at the screen, and not have to worry about where the microphone is. I'm also going to be able to look, be able to do that for baseball this year. So there's a lot of great things to it. So thank you. I want to, thank you to my fiance for actually doing it. Cause like I said, we go back and forth and we don't try to buy anything for each other. This is um, we just try to strictly pay for bills and pay for what the kids needs and, and that stuff like that. So, when you actually get something for one another, it's a little bit more important. Talking about her getting something for me. If you're watching on streaming platforms, that Padre sign, was actually, made in dedication as, hey, it's Friday the 13th, but also my, I know last year I talked about this, but my uncle, who was one of my close friends, family members, growing up, he was, he passed away, actually a decade today, unfortunately. And so, in honorary, I know we didn't kick things off with this, but the show is in a sense dedicated to my uncle. So she actually got the idea of, hey, let me do something special. I love it. Whoever made this, I want to give a big shout out to them. I don't know the details about that, but it's a wooden frame. It's painted and signed out San Diego Padres. They have the brown and gold colors, a little ribbon, tactical ribbon with some fig leaves on top of it as well. It's currently hanging. And then it says my uncle's name's Leonard, and the date that he passed away. So all that good stuff. Thank you guys for the thoughts. I also want to give a big shout out to Armchair Booking. Steve Barber, Dwaylon Davis at it every week as they provide news and highlights in professional wrestling. Armchair Booking Podcast is a weekly wrestling podcast found on YouTube and all audio streaming platforms. Go check out their YouTube channels, like, share, and subscribe today at armchairbooking.com. Man, I love having conversations with those guys. They always give a different perspective, and that's what I love about Armchair Booking is that they're very open, right? And to be able to have that conversation, I'm at 27 years of age. Be able to have that conversation with someone that's older than me, that's watched a lot more wrestling, that's kind of maybe more decorative in the knowledge. Dwaylon Davis, I gotta tell you, man, Dwaylon is the brains. I know, no offense to Steve Barber, but Dwaylon Davis is the brains. If it's about wrestling, he knows it, and he knows a lot of it. So they make a perfect 1-2 combination. They've been doing this for years. Well, when we first started our program, we, kind of meshed up with them, headed out to a couple of events with Steve. Great guy. Love doing, talking to him, picking his brain out in the world of sports, especially in Dwaylon Davis. We're talking about he's also a huge Raiders fan, and coming off this weekend, there is a very good chance as the Raiders, unravel their story about moving on from the Derek Carr. It was noticed the last 2 weeks of the season that the Raiders decided to rest Derek Carr. They decided to put him on the bench and potentially to keep him healthy heading into the postseason, heading into the offseason for a possible trade. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't personally believe nor support the idea. I don't, we talked about but we mentioned, on Derek Carr's behalf that I don't believe that Derek Carr should be going anywhere. Okay. I don't really think there's many quarterbacks out there. Obviously, the Raiders are not in a position to get a top tier quarterback like a Bryce Young or a Will Levis. And who knows? The NFL draft works, wonders And teams, although we could sit here and say that Houston needs a quarterback, they may not draft a quarterback in the class. So there is a chance that but other than that, the quarterback class this year heading into the draft is not big. And so they sat him down. Hopefully they remain, keep him healthy. And one of the biggest concerns were, I'm like, man, you shouldn't be trading. And this is to really come back and really to benefit the Raiders. I remember last season, Carr signed a 3-year extension, $121.5 million on that record. If the Raiders sell him, all right, they still owe him about $30 million on the release or a trade. So that $121 million cuts down to 30. So you end up probably only spending about, still, you're thinking about, all right, still own him 30, probably like another 30 for this past season. So you're probably getting him at half the cost. And this is going to be a long-term decision for the Raiders. Maybe they want to address another quarterback and go a different route, because the original plan for Las Vegas with Derek Carr kind of went through and went out the building. Okay. Carr is still looking for a, championship ring. He's still looking for that Lombardi trophy. But it's going to unfortunately have to be elsewhere. Now, Carr is still a good quarterback. He's just playing in a tough division, along with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, now Russell Wilson, which I think that's the aftermath. But, overall, man, I got to tell, and I got to say that it sucks to see Derek Carr having to say goodbye, appreciative of what the opportunity has given him. But now there's a lot of teams out there. So what team right now is probably looking more likely to contend next year that Derek Carr could look? Derek Carr's looking. I think that Derek Carr is going to have an opportunity to at least have a little say in who he wants to go into, what team he wants to go to. Either the Raiders will work with Carr saying, all right, do you want to go to Seattle? Do you want to go to San Francisco? Do you want to go to Indianapolis? And if so, see what that team has to offer. And if not, it's just going to be a release. Either way, a release or trade. But the other thing is that Las Vegas Raiders, I think, knows a little bit more and a little bit better than just to release Derek Carr. They're not going to make any transition until they know that they have another quarterback in play. Either that's going to be coming out of the 23 draft, or that is going to come out of an actual trade or a signing of a free agent quarterback. We mentioned free agents availability this offseason. So, there is a high doubt that Derek Carr will be dealt. There is a high doubt that Derek Carr will not be a Raider, and that will not be part of the Raider Nation anymore. You hope that is not one against the competitive rivalries, but we wish him, the best of luck. But it won't be done until the Raiders have that locked insurance quarterback as well. So we talked about a little bit of that. Also, last thing, want to end off the show, Dodgers made some big moves yesterday, officially releasing the previous suspended Trevor Bauer on Thursday. Dodgers will still pay Bauer $225 million for the 2023 season, something that the Dodgers have done this year. It's kind of been surprisingly on the down edge of, not really improving their roster. They're trying to unload, knowing that they're still going. No, they knew that this was going to come. They had to get rid of, they knew what was best for business for the Dodgers, for Los Angeles franchise, city of Los Angeles, for the Dodgers franchise, was to get rid of Trevor Bauer. Okay. That was the given entity that, hey, when his suspension is up, what are we going to do with him? We're going to get rid of him. And they knew that they were going to have to tackle on $225 million in 2023, which I think now's led the Dodgers to have to unload a lot of players like Cody Bellinger, the Turner, Justin and Trey Turner, and much more. That now really affects the possibility of the Dodgers being such a great team. They don't have that roster because, a quarter of, $225 million of that payroll is going to Trevor Bauer. It's 22.5. So almost $250,000. $225 million, if I could get that worded correctly. Here's the other thing. If Bauer gets picked up by any team, they would only be hooked to pay $720,000, the league's minimum in 2023, which I think comes to option. All right, here approaches the next schedule over the next few weeks as we get ready for spring training and the opening day. You do look at and you do think about, all right, what teams need a starting pitcher? Because although you may not want the drama, because the drama is there and the pass is there, and I think that, if I would say if it was up to me, Bauer doesn't have a job ever again. He's done with Major League Baseball. Just retire. It's going to be the headache and the heartaches. I think if any team decides to pick him up, there's going to be some heartaches going along with it. There's going to be drama. I mean, we knew what the type of drama we had before these allegations were made, before his suspensions. And I think that they will continue while if he did get signed up. I don't think nothing is going to change. But if you're a team out there, and there's a few teams out there, such as the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, the Padres, the Giants, and the Twins, can all settle for a great starting pitcher as in Trevor Bauer. Now, if you're asking me, being a Padres fan, I sure hope Trevor Bauer does not go to San Diego, just for the fact that the drama. And you have to now live with the fact that, with these allegations even though it's behind us, you still have to live with that. So for me, I would try to rule Trevor Bauer out of San Diego, but the Mets and the Yankees, if they're desperately needing a starting pitcher to wrap up the offseason, I don't doubt it. I highly think maybe the Minnesota Twins kind of may fall into that category of getting Trevor Bauer then, but who knows? We'll still to come. But with that being said, we are at the end of the show. I would like to end off with some decent news that we go into the weekend healthy, excited about. And news is about the Cincinnati Bearcats. And it's not the news that you guys are thinking of. But pitchers and catchers were scheduled for the Reds to report Wednesday, February 15th. And the pitchers and catchers, Wednesday, February 15th. Positions on Monday, February 20th. So there you go. You have it there. All right. It's been a wonderful episode, you guys. Great morning. You guys have a wonderful weekend. There's a lot of sports going on this weekend. We'll come back Monday and review all of it and much more. All right. Tune us in tomorrow, 4:00, as we call the Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers in the Super Wildcard weekend. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy you guys' weekend. Have a great day. And we'll see you guys very soon. You guys are listening to The Throw-In with Justin. That's me right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.